Hello, and welcome to the Central Coast Poetry Shows, and I'm your host, Jim Russo. Now, my reason for producing this show is this. For the last 15 years, I've been attending and reading at poetry readings all over California's Central Coast. And during that time, I've had the privilege of hearing and seeing some very talented poets read their own words. This show is to be a platform for those poets to be seen and heard by you. Now, tonight's guest is Lisa Charnock. Lisa teaches a bi-monthly poetry workshop at the Salinas Valley State Prison and has collaborated in the formation of a nonprofit, Right to Write Press, to publish participants' work. Lisa is currently pursuing an MFA in poetry at the Solstice program of Pine Manor College. Lisa's poetry won first place in the 2008 Powell's Book Portland Poem Contest, which is a famous bookstore in Portland, and has appeared in the Southern Poetry Review, Grist, the Cape Rock, Pennsylvania English, and Red Wheelbarrow. She has studied under Ellen Bass, Danusha Lamaris, Sharon Olds, Mark Doughty, Tony Hoagland, Frank Gaspar, and Marie Howe. Lisa lives in Aptos, California, and enjoys spending time gardening, hiking, and reforesting an 80-acre timber property in Oregon. Thank you for coming, and thank you so much, Lisa, for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about the program at the prisons and what you're all doing.
So we have a workshop at the Salinas Valley State Prison, and that's a level 4 maximum security men's prison. It's where Soledad, they think of the Soledad prison. And the workshop is actually in the mental health component of the prison, as part of their enhanced outpatient program. And it was started by a really remarkable psychologist at the prison who's also a poet, Dr. Benjamin Block. And he worked with Ellen Bass for many years through the prison system to get this thing established. And Ellen taught the first several sessions and then turned to her network of students to look for someone who could pick it up. And I'm really happy to say that even though Dr. Block eventually moved on to other work, we've managed to keep the program going for over 5 years now.
Oh,
and so it's
great.
Been quite wonderful. There's 4 teachers who teach the program, and now we're weekly. So we've actually gone to more frequent. We have a 5th in training even. And everyone has a different approach. We don't really have a curriculum. This isn't like a college writing program. Mm-hmm. But we work really hard on bringing the writers a sense of what is the craft. And we expose them to a whole lot of different poets and aesthetics and different ways of writing. And it's amazing to watch them grow. We have a little stability in the program sometimes. So occasionally we're able to watch somebody over months or even years. Mm-hmm. There is also a lot of change in the prison. And most of these men have been involved in the criminal justice system since they were teenagers.
Oh, geez.
And many are going in front of parole boards periodically to review their sentence prospects for release. We know some of them will never get out. Others have some hope. And in any event, though, the rehabilitation that they do through the personal transformation of writing is instrumental to their change, to their ability to either survive in the prison system or hopefully do better when they're out. So it's been incredibly rewarding.
I can sense that in listening to you.
Yeah.
What a challenge.
It is.
What
it's a
challenge.
Good kind of challenge. Yeah. And it's funny because you always think that it's all going to be really heavy and it's all going to be, intense stuff. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's very
I imagine it can
intense.
be.
But other times they just bring in really bad love poetry. It's it goes all over the board.
Well, Lisa, what I'm going to ask you to do now is step to the podium and give us some poems from the prisoners and let us hear what they have to say.
I'd be
and
happy
thank you
to.
so much for your work.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lisa Charnock.
The poems that I'm going to be reading are all from individual poets in the Salinas Valley State Prison Poetry Workshop, and I'll do a little introduction of the ones that I'm going to read. The first is Walter Savage. He was in our workshop from the very beginning. He has been in 2 to 3 prisons since then. They move around a lot. He understood the power of words, although he didn't really consider himself to be a writer, and his encouragement was a really powerful incentive to others to risk diving deeper in their own work. The poem I'll read of his is called Moments. Was my moment the second I was born, the first sign of my coming, the instant the placenta was torn, the sudden of the tsunami, the promise of nature's phenomenon, only the strength of a mother's love, the unconditional embrace of the natural disaster coming on. Earthquake after earthquake, before I breathe, I bring pain. My first cry, the first of her many, and throughout her life, nothing changed. Her joy, the birth of a child. Who would want one? The misery and shattering of lives, the wake of my destruction. For the touching of so many lives, there will be no atonement. If I was a stillborn, I wouldn't have been so many moments. The next poem is by Howard Street Jr., and he was one of the most open and searching poets we've had the pleasure to teach. I'll read two pieces by him. One is a very short poem that he wrote literally the day that he learned that his father had died. Then I'll read another longer piece. Hello, namesake. Hello, namesake. Long time, no see. Saw us in the mirror this morning. Saw you and me. Did you feel the tear, the single tear roll down my face? I know you like, damn, is that all I get? LOL. To say that I live in a cell with another man, surely you understand I can't let another man see me cry. Besides, I cried like the baby you went half on when I was first born. Hello, namesake. Long time, no see. R.I.P. Second piece is called Hate. We have all been infected with a sickness that can be traced back to the auction block. Mothers, sisters, you must not feel guilty for what has been done to us, for only the strong go crazy. The weak just go along, and what I once thought was cruelty, I now understand was fear that hands stronger than yours and whiter than yours would strangle my young life out of my body into oblivion. My sisters, I am proud of you. I look at you and see the strength of our people. I have seen you struggle in the dark, the world beating on your back, watched you dragging your catch back to our den, pulling your pots and pans out to cook it, marking up my homework with your love. It's sad, all the hurt and pain going on in the world, a hurt and pain that black women all over the world have tried to protect their men and children from for centuries. The dollar has the image of a pyramid with an all-seeing eye on it. That all-seeing eye has now become cameras on cell phones, eyes everywhere. Nothing goes unseen. Cops killing black men just because. Hate, we see you. Radical groups blowing up innocent people, we see you. It's all the hate that hate made. A hate black women have tried to protect their men and children from for centuries. So hate, I say to you, I vow to kill you before you kill me. The next poet is David Massetti, and he is a polymath. He speaks multiple languages. He would launch into an Italian aria on the spot if the occasion called for it. And in many ways, he could probably teach the workshop. This piece he wrote after writing a very short piece about the San Francisco Bay from seeing a painting by Cézanne. This is called Searching for San Francisco. The lion, the fox, and the phoenix. I must rise from the ashes of my youth, the time when I made so many fatal mistakes. From the time when I only knew how to play the ferocious lion, throwing caution to the wind. Inside the lion's den, I grew up. Now, 20 years later, I have learned to be part fox. In fact, I'm mostly fox, avoiding problems before they occur. I don't ramble, I don't drink, I don't borrow, I don't loan. I don't buy drugs, I don't sell drugs, I don't take unnecessary risks. I have learned how to spot the traps and avoid them. I have learned to spot the fake friends and true enemies. These are the skills I'll take with me if I ever make it back to my beloved city by the bay. Humbleness, caution. Then I can enjoy the old Victorian two-story apartments, the Art Deco, the Palace of Fine Arts, where I used to be a mad scientist. Chinatown, Wa Ai Ni Chung Pua, North Beach, where I remember childhood earthquakes, and the Mission District, where I ran wild as buck at the end of Call of the Wild, or White Fang at the beginning. I don't know which I am more like, Buck or White Fang. I think it's important to be both. It's important to be part of my city, to recover from mistakes and get back to a righteous path, a productive, helpful path. I've got to get back to the city with my new talents, see Coit Tower and Golden Gate Park, play chess down at Powell Street, Twin Peaks with the wind and telescopes, Lombard Street, where I can be crooked and still be a good man. The next poet is Larry Jones, and he's writing a wonderfully unique novel that we type because they don't have typewriters, interspersed with poems and sermons. But in class, he does amazing in-class exercises. I'll read two of his. The Bird Nest. The bird nest high in the trees, the bird nest with the baby birds, the bird nest that my brother was climbing up to see, the bird nest that had two baby birds in it, the bird nest that my brother wanted to see, the bird nest that didn't have a mother bird, the bird nest that wasn't long before the mother showed, the bird nest that the mother brought worms to, the bird nest where the mother wanted to feed her babies, the bird nest that got my brother attacked by the mother, the bird nest that got my brother pecked in the head, the bird nest that he saw while falling to the ground. Pitching fruit. I can tell you a lot about the leaves running through and over the ground as the cutters flip them on their backs, stomachs, to the sky. As you gather the fruit, like soldiers, you have to float them like a river, running to the bank where you get real money for them. You have to keep the main line green. I'm talking about bringing fruit for your money. I pitch watermelons. I'm calling you, truck. Let me get this fruit on the truck. Have it lie there like a dead man in a casket, dead in there as the sun beats down on our backs. But we're going into Mexico tonight. Next poet I'm going to read is Roger Smith, and he's no longer in the workshop, but he lit up the room when he was there, enthusiastically appreciating the work of the others, and he wrote powerful work himself. This is a poem called Ramia is Her Name. She brought me joy and hope before the pain. I would talk to her all night, you know, give her game. She would kick and move around, giving Myra joyful pains. I would laugh. Every day we did the same. Listen to music, read books. I would talk to her, giving game. Then, August 12th, our lives changed. The doctor said, it's too early, 4 months ahead of time. But she's coming anyway. Next thing you know, blood, labor pains. Push, baby, push. Room full of hope and joy. This was before the pain. 2 hours later, no cry, no heartbeat. Room full of guilt and pain. But we remember she brought us joy. So Ramia is her name. Theo Hernandez, who was an artist as well as a writer, and he was especially drawn to haiku, and I have 5 haiku. And each one had a little kind of a tag that he put on it, and I'll read the tag first. Learning to love. Petals, unfolding, quintessential, yet awesome, blossoms, my beauty. The thrill of books, old ones especially. Pages, aged, dust, scent. Thoughts held in time, till one reads, yet wrote for who knows? Why do I write? Have I wrote for you or just a soliloquy? Either way, read, read. our three kings, teachers. Most astoundingly, your time, your thought and not fear, thus I know in hope. And the last one, what I got from haiku and how it can free a prisoner. Harmony begat friendship. Friendship begat hope. Hope begat this page. I would like to read another poem by Mr. Savage called Eyes Blurry. Like the late, great Tupac, I understand growing. If I die tonight, I also understand waking up with that expletive finger on each hand hollering out, fuck the world. I live life like I'm still me till they kill me. Unless self and I have that battle till the death. And in your eyes, that would be crazy, because all you see is one me. Truth be told, when we fight, I bleed a little bit. When we get a hold of something hot, I'm the one chuckling as he screams a little bit. Either way, like boxers, we go to our separate corners with the coldest stares, but relieved a little bit. Eyes blurry as the tension fades, still angry, but at ease a little bit. We call a truce because, like lovers, we sleep together and we don't go to bed mad. But when we wake up, it's back and forth I pace in my cell with a hot cup of coffee, debating on if it's me, my dreams, or nightmares, or just my reality that's all fucked up and really sad. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lisa Charnock. My second guest is Rose Black. Rose lives and works at Renaissance Stone, a sculpting studio in East Oakland. Her poetry has been widely published in journals and anthologies, such as the South Carolina Review, Wisconsin Review, Ninth Letters, Spillway, and Slant. She's the author of 3 books, Clearing, Winter Lights, and Green Fields. Her first 2 books, Clearing and Winter Lights, are included in Yale's Beinecke Library for the Yale Collection of American Literature. Rose has been editor of the Marin Poetry Center Anthology, and she currently teaches poetry at Salinas Valley State Prison. Her extensive article about the workshop there, nominated for a Pushcart Prize, is featured in Red Wheelbarrow 2015 Literary Magazine. She was also a contributing editor for Red Wheelbarrow 2016, which featured poetry and art from the men in the Salinas Valley State Prison workshop. Rose is one of the founders of Right to Write Press, a nonprofit which promotes the growth of emerging writers who are incarcerated in California state prisons. And now, with further ado, my guest, Rose Black. Thank you for coming, Rose.
I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm just so impressed by both of you and your work you're doing. Please tell us more about what it's like down there.
Oh, at the prison.
Well, or what you'd like to speak to.
Well, I would like to talk about the press,
Okay.
which sort of grew out of the prison workshop. We wanted a way to honor the men's work. It became clear that they'd like some sort of product for family and friends. Mm-hmm. And while there's plenty of places that publish prisoners' work online, we have not found any that make beautiful, small chapbooks that are attractive. Uh-huh. And that's what we found was wanted. There was one particular incident. I spent about 3 years slowly typing a novella for a particular prisoner. And I handed him the typed pages afterwards. And he looked at me and he sort of squinched up his eyes and he said, well, couldn't it look more like a book? And that gave me a push to get involved
Right.
in this next venture of this formation of our press. Like Pan America, we feel we stand at the intersection of literature and human rights. We believe it's transformative and very important for these voices to be heard.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're just ecstatic.
Well, we have a lot of work to do, but it's very exciting. We have 2 books coming out in early 2019. One is called Scroungy, and that's the novella that I was referring to, and the other one is called Confessions of the Tormented by James Hamdi. And so those 2, and we also have broadsides and, beautiful poems on lovely paper. We have 4 of those, and I would encourage everybody to go to our website. We've just started out in March of 2018. That's when we were official. So we're still developing our website, but there's a lot to see on it.
Good.
That is of interest, I think.
Well, we'll have that link at the end of the show on our credits,
Good.
so people can reference it there.
Wonderful.
And so now I'm going to ask you, Rose, to step to the podium
Okay.
and read some of your poems that are coming up from your group. Ladies and gentlemen, Rose Black.
The first 2 poems I'd like to read were written by a man called Rodolfo Anderson. He's a prolific writer. He wrote a novel which was recently published online called Climbing to Fall, and I'm going to read you 2 of his poems. The first is called My Sentence Was 1,000 Years of Joy, and that's after a poem by Robert Bly with the same name. You are sentenced to 290 years with 9 consecutive life terms, were the words from the magistrate. You better wager against reincarnation. When you die, you'll return as a zebra, be corralled and placed in a zoo. When you die, you'll return as a parrot, be netted and placed in a cage. When you die, you'll return with the name Freeway Freddy, the mouse that roams decades of prison cells. That was the laughter from my accusers. However, in my spirit as a zebra, I will forever feel the blades of grass sprinkled with fresh dew between my hooves. In my dreams as a parrot, I will for all eternity surf the trade winds blowing over earth's wonders. In my heart, as Freeway Freddy, I will bring companionship to the one who quenches my thirst with tears of abandonment. This next poem came from an assignment on walls, and walls are a very interesting thing to write about, and one day I gave a lesson highlighting poems about walls written by incarcerated people from around the world. And then the class was invited to write their own wall poems. So this is what Rodolfo came up with. A wall which is worn. I sit and stare at a wall which is worn, influenced by abandonment, family pictures which are torn. Because I'm all man, old posters which are porn. Then, right before my eyes, an abstract theater begins to form. Delicate curtains made of silk, in the upper corners they hang. Their tailor is a critic. Her review is bitter, like a widow's fang. I continue to watch until its story unfolds. Then the wall begins to talk. It announces, look, behold, graffiti etched in stone, names of poets unknown, artists' pens roam. A new perspective is born, until now its language foreign, on a wall which is worn. From a collage of profanity, an eloquent motif blends. The purpose of this wall my mind transcends. On a wall which is worn, I settle an ant on his back. Escape this chaos through a crack. Forsake my flesh, my spirit won't come back. My imagination is the dark stallion that doesn't slack. Ballets, musicals, even Penn and Teller perform on a wall which is worn. This matinee is concluding. The usher is calling my name. Reality is what's insanity. This wall is what's sane. Upon first glance, its defilement appears a storm. But I have sailed the 7 seas, visited the 8 wonders of the world, and traveled the depths of the universe, all on a wall which is worn. So the next poet I'd like to honor is Ubaldo Teque Jr., and he's originally from Guatemala. In his poems, he says Guate, that's Guatemala's nickname. In addition to being a poet, Mr. Teque writes essays and is working on his memoir. He recently had 2 poems published in Pilgrimage, a literary magazine in Colorado. This next poem was published in the Red Wheelbarrow Literary Magazine, 2017, and it's called I'm Tired of Being a Man. It was inspired by Pablo Neruda's Comunando. It so happens that I'm tired of being a prisoner. Drowning in repetition in prison time is not an illusion, it's a religion. The seasons grieve as they pass me by, as tossed, scattered prisoners write long letters, together with loneliness awaiting a response. Waiting helps me cope, but it so happens that I'm tired of being a prisoner. Something in me has died, and the years have wrinkled my skin without a sound. So I deposit my poetry and hope into the cloudless sky. And this next poem was one of the ones published in Pilgrimage. It's called Nino Immigrant. I was 10 or maybe 9 when I drank my first cold beer in a can. Curiosity led me to the fridge where Papito always kept a 12-pack. Coors taste like the urine Mamita and I saved in the gallons when our water ran out on the way to El Norte when I was 5 years old. Straight faded, watching the news on a black and white 13-inch TV. Maria Elena Salinas on KMEX, Canal 34, LA's Spanish station. I already understood, spoke, and wrote English, but I felt safe in Spanish, craving guate, missing my grandparents, cousins, and friends here in LA, where there are no pollo comperos, chuchitos, or atol elote. Concrete replaces the thick forest. There's no place to rest. I'm just a young boy. I know that soldiers and the guerrillas equal murder, but I miss my nest in the place of many trees. Buzzing, staring into the 13-inch screen, wondering, can the coyote take me back home? The next poet I'm going to honor is James Hamdi. And he's the one that will have a book out this early spring, Confessions of the Tormented. He is such a prolific writer. He's written a huge number of fine poems. So it's very exciting that he will at last be in print in this way. In the first sentence of Mr. Hamdi's artist statement, he reminds us that poetry is a bright light in a dark place, where your words are a highway to freedom. Mother's Garden. Along the rows of fresh emerald leaves, legions of healthy soldiers prepare to sacrifice for the good of their maker. Dirty knees, backaches, and close observations, the small muddy yard soon becomes a colorful paradise. The whiteness of my family's teeth at dinner was a clear sign of success. Earlier that day, my mother and I bonded over gardening while stepping over the rows of emerald Caesars, muddy boots and all. Mother held her back, stopping to readjust the divider that held the band of emerald soldiers. The river is alive. I took an old crate and a mop handle and found myself rowing across the river. As speed picked up, I was thrown dead center into the current, drowning, not knowing how to swim. But I found my will to remain upright and did as the fish did. I darted down and swam across to the other side of the river, where deer lapped in the shallow end. My crate and mop handle were no more useful than a bicycle in that situation. I survived because I needed to succeed at something before completely giving up. And this next poem is by Steve Robinson. Steve is a deep thinker who is interested in politics, civil rights, and civil rights leaders. He's recently been writing about police violence against Black men. This poem is called Little Eyes. As I moved, the mirror caught my face. What my grandmother called little eyes stared back at me. In those eyes I saw the flames of dreams, burning the wet blankets meant to dampen them. As I watched, the mirror caught fire, the flame of dreams yet unrealized, melting the mirror. I watched the dripping, burning bars disintegrating into freedom. I watched the entire cell catch dream fire, burning away the state clothes from my body. I watched the dream harden, forged by the fire. Then I saw what my grandmother called little eyes, staring back at me. I smiled at the sight of the flame, dreaming. This poem is by Joseph Weldon, and he's the man who wrote Scroungy, the novella, and you can read more about it on our website. This is called Memory. Percolated mud-black coffee, Old Crow whiskey, and a fat Siamese cat. Walk to the marsh, smoke that cigarette where you had become a man. No money, just a partial pack of OCBs and an empty Prince Albert tobacco can. Swamp water liquor, Siamese cat. Old man, have you found any happiness now that you've looked back? It's just always been you and that fat, nasty cat. There will be a casket for two and a prayer for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rose Black, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you for finding us. This has been Central Coast Poetry Shows. I'm your host, Jim Russo. Find us again, and good night.
I'm beating up the street tonight. I slept through the natural light, but I'll do it if it feels alright.